Welcome to the Daily MBA, where business wisdom is served fresh and fast, straight from one of the top MBA programs in the world. I'll give you summaries of my lectures and readings, as well as the most important insights gained from an MBA, so you can apply all of this knowledge in every business. Let's get started. In my last episode, I already explained the 10 most important concepts in macroeconomics that you should consider. But in today's episode, we're already going to take a deeper dive into everything that relates to the exchange rate. And so this is a topic that's very important for me because I come from Colombia, where we have a floating exchange rate, which, as you know, because I explained it in my previous episode, is one that is moving with the market. And if you've ever seen the Colombian peso, or mostly any of the Latin American currencies in the market, you can see that they are fluctuating a lot. And so in this episode, I'm going to explain all of the factors that are adding up to this movement, but only for those currencies that are going to be floating. So if you remember, floating exchange rates are going to be those that have the flexibility. If you have a fixed exchange rate, all of these factors won't be affecting your rate because you already pegged it into another country. And so this may be sometimes good or sometimes bad. And so let me give you real examples of when it would be good or when it would be bad. Usually, the most important aspect that you should consider with exchange rate is the impact that this is going to have in your exports and in your imports. So what does this mean? Basically, if my exchange rate is very bad, I can't really bring products from countries that have expensive exchange rates because this is going to cost me a lot. But on the other hand, all of these rich countries are going to look into the products that I am making and they're going to say, this is so cheap. We need to get more of this. We need to get more coffee, for example, in Colombia because it's very cheap when you compare it to other countries. So bad exchange rates are actually going to be boosting your exports because all of the countries want to buy from the best prices. So if you have a bad exchange rate, this is usually going to be pushing your exports higher, which would eventually make your currency a little bit more expensive. What if you have a fixed exchange rate? Technically, if you fix it low, which is something that China was doing, China kept its exchange rate fixed a bit lower, so it could continue being cheap, technically, even though they were exporting so much, then this is going to be a good thing because you may keep exporting and bringing money in without having that money have an impact in you. But you may also have the opposite effect. So what if you have a currency that's fixed into a very high exchange rate, like the euro, and you start having economic problems? This is what happened to Greece. They were pegged into the euro, which is a very strong currency, and they couldn't keep up. And usually what a country would do when you can't keep up economically would be put your exchange rate lower, start boosting your exports, and improving your economy. But what if you can't change that? Greece exports were just as expensive as the exports from Germany. And of course, if any country in the European Union could choose whether to import from Greece or from Germany, who would they choose? They would choose Germany because they have a stronger industry. So sometimes having fixed exchange rates, it's going to be beneficial for countries, especially countries that have lots of exports. This is going to be beneficial for them because they are benefiting from having an exchange rate. But this is going to be bad for countries that can't keep up with the exchange rate that they already set up. So as everything, it's going to be relative. If you're a strong economy, if you're not as strong, all of these factors are going to be determined into the good opinion or bad opinion of having a fixed exchange rate. But so now that you know what's about the fixed one, let's look at the flexible one. So what I was starting to talk about in the beginning, this one is going to be modified by certain factors. And these are going to be basically three factors. First one is the balance of trades. So how I was telling you, exports minus imports. This is going to be crucial for the exchange rate, because what I was telling you, if you're exporting more, that will mean your exchange rate will go up. If you're importing more, you're spending more money abroad and you're getting with no money at home, basically. So this is going to bring your exchange rate down. So you have to figure out what's the correct balance, and you have to be careful about something called the Dutch disease in your countries. And so what does this mean? When a country has very powerful natural resources, this may be leading to higher exports of those natural resources, such as oil. And so if you start earning a lot of money because of the exports in oil, this may push your exchange rate higher. And once it's higher, this is going to hurt the industry that you had, because it's not a resource, but this high exchange rate is actually making the situation worse for all of the things that you were trying to produce in your country and sell them in the global economy. And so this is called the Dutch disease, because it happened to the Netherlands many years ago, of having negative consequences that can arise from a spike in the value of a nation's currency. So they were doing really good. They exported a lot of natural resources. This pushed their currency higher, and it actually hurt all the other exports that they had going on, because since their money was now so high, so expensive, all of the other countries didn't want to buy it. So you have to be careful if in your country you have very good natural resources, because this ones may bring up a spike, and that spike is actually going to end up hurting your entire country's industry. So this is going to be the Dutch disease, and it's the first factor that you should consider when looking at the exchange rate, exports minus imports. Second factor would be what we abbreviate in economics as the letter J, and this means the investment income received minus the investment income paid. So again, this is just more money accounts. Let's say if you are paying interest to another country, then this is going to be money that's going out. And if you're receiving interest from another country, this is going to be money coming in. So that's why you're going to have this difference. And again, that would also impact the exchange rate, just not as much as exports minus imports, just because the size of investment income received and investment income paid is going to be, for most countries, way smaller than the exports and imports. And so what is the third and final factor? Is something called the capital account. And capital account comes from capital inflows minus capital outflows. So basically, if you add all of these three things, so exports minus imports, investment income received minus investment income paid, and then capital inflows minus capital outflows, you're going to get the change in the exchange rate. And so what you have to consider is that this is going to be usually a balance. So you may have, on the one hand, the capital account, which I explained in my previous episode. This will be X plus J, so the first two elements that I explained. And then the third element is called a capital account. So you may have, for example, a capital account surplus, but this one must be offset by a capital account deficit. So it's always going to be balancing out, because this way it's going to mean that this change in the exchange rate is balanced. So now, if we were going to plot all of these elements into a more visual way, we could also do them like this. And I'm going to be sharing a photo while I'm talking so it makes more sense. But if you see, all of the things on the left are going to mean things that are bringing money into a country, and all of the things in the right are going to be all of the things that are taking money outside of a country. So of course, if you have more of the things of the left, your currency is going to go up. And if you have more of the things of the right, your currency is going to go down, basically. And this is going to be a very easy and visual way of seeing it and understanding it. And I'll explain this graph. So the first two bubbles that you're seeing are exports and imports. This was the first element that I told you. Exports minus imports will affect our currency. And so exports basically are bringing money in because you're selling your product to some other country in the world, but in exchange, you're receiving money for that. So this is going to be a crucial way of bringing money in. Now, if you are doing imports, this is going to be a way of leading money outside of your country because you want to buy someone else's product. So you're taking the money that you already have and paying it to another country. It's going to be similar to the second element that we should consider, the J. And so this is going to be investment income received. You are getting this money in your country. Investment income paid. You are taking the money outside of your country. And lastly, capital inflows is going to be all of the money that's coming from investments and things into your country. Outflows means that it's going out. So if you get these three elements, exports minus imports, investment received minus investment paid, and the capital inflows minus the capital outflows, these are going to be all of the factors that you need to add in order to do the changes in the exchange rate. And so I hope after this you can remember those 6 elements that can be summarized in 3 equations, since all of these are going to be the factors that affect flexible exchange rates. And now let's look at a specific example of how all of these accounts would be impacted with a simple transaction like buying a car. So let's imagine I am in Colombia and I want to buy a German car. So if I do this, let's assume the car, it's just going to cost $100 for having an easy example. My exports are going to go up by 100 because I am bringing in the car from Germany. And this is also going to be balanced out either in consumption, government expenditure, or investment, depending on what I'm going to be using the car for. So this will depend on the purpose of use. Let's imagine that since I am the one buying it and it's only for my personal use, just consumption will go up by 100. If I was bringing it to be the car for my company, then investments would be the one going up. Or if I was bringing the car to be part of a government expense, then 100 would go up in the G letter. So you can change it C, G, or I, depending all on the purpose. So I already put my exports up. I already have my C from consumption going up because the car is going to be for my personal use. But how is this affecting all of the payments that we just saw? Let's imagine that I'm paying for that car in cash. If I'm paying in cash, then 100 would go down in the capital outflows because I just sent out a capital outflow of 100. But if we have another example, let's assume that this German company has a bank account in Colombia where they are receiving all of the money that they are gathering, then this would actually put up 100 in inflow. And why is that? Because even though I am paying for this German car, this German company is keeping the money inside of Colombia. So this would be 100, but up in the inflows. And what if then they decided to cash out all of that money into Germany? Well, then again, that would be cash outflows, so the money would go away to go back to Germany. And last example would be, what if the company had a savings account, which is most likely not the case, but this savings account was giving them interest. So if the interest rate was 10%, technically that 10% of 100, so just $10, would be entered into the investment income paid. And that is where we would see that account being modified. So that would be affected only if we have interest that we have to pay the German company. And then depending on if their money is staying in the account or if it's going away, it would affect our capital inflows or capital outflows. So hopefully this is clear and it's an easy example to show you the effect that exports, imports, investment income received, investment income paid, and capital inflows and capital outflows will have in the overall exchange rate. So next time that you're looking at the news and you see that a currency is having drastic changes, you already know that it's going to be related to one of the 6 factors that I just explained. If you like the episodes that I'm doing, make sure to give me a review and share this episode with your friends that also want to learn about macroeconomics. And then I'll see you next week.